Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first Ask Me Anything as Magentic. So, if you were joining us, we are hugely appreciative. Thank you so much for spending the time, for seeing the post, for registering, and for joining us. If you are in fact joining us, we would love to take the first few moments to hear from you, to see who is on this live stream. Please post or chat or like or bump or whatever you do these days, because we'd love to see who is here with us as we are getting going. And while we do that, David, welcome to our Ask Me Anything. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Ian. Yeah,
Very nice.
delighted
Nice
to be here.
T-shirt. I like it.
Yeah,
So
what are the
we got-
chances we'd wear the same thing?
right,
So
exactly. We need to get the logo like right up here under the
embarrassing.
net so
Exactly.
that you can see it. So awesome. Okay, so we are going to begin to get started. And please, if you are joining us, hey, there we go. Let's see. Somebody said LinkedIn user, a good friend LinkedIn user, says love the purple and the new venture. Congrats on launch. Thank you, anonymous LinkedIn user. We like the purple too, and we are also excited about the launch. So thank you for seeing that and for joining us. It's weird, anonymous LinkedIn user. I think that's all of LinkedIn is what I think that means. That person represents everyone on LinkedIn. All 1 billion people have just said congratulations. Let's see. Abonit says, here for the passion of AI and transformation it can bring. That's awesome. Thank you, Abonit. Yes. It's hard not to be. It's hard not to be both passionate and a little confused right now, and probably a little scared as to just what is happening and what you need to do and what you need to know. So that's part of the reason we're doing this. John, welcome. The future of work is now here. That's a deep statement that needs to be unpicked. The future is now. Yes, more so than ever before. Frankly, the speed at which this stuff is happening. Scott, welcome. I appreciate the perspective to integrate humans to AI. Cool. We do too, Scott. I think you're gonna hear a lot in the next sort of 40 minutes or however long David and I can put up with one another and in this live stream.
It's been about 14 years, but any minute now it could break.
That's right. You could watch it live on television. It's just like, I've had it. I'm out. But yes, we absolutely fundamentally believe that integration, that intersection, that hybrid collaboration between those two things is the future of work that is now, as John says. So if anyone else is joining us, would love to see your comments, see your shout outs. Please let us know you're here, because that also energizes us. If you are new to us, we're going to start this AMA with a little bit of background and context, just because, for the sake of anyone who is not familiar with David or myself, probably a little helpful to know what it is that we've been up to over the last 15 years, because it feels somewhat relevant, I think, David.
I'd like to think. I think we're building on the foundations we've been setting for a while now.
Yep. So let's talk about those foundations. So I'll set us up, but then leave the storytelling to David. But ultimately, David and I met probably about 15 years ago, and we met in the world of global talent. We were working with leading enterprises all over the place to help them tap into real, energized, passionate, capable talent all over the planet. And all the places you would think of, everything from Eastern Europe and Latin America to India and Asia. But our focus and slant was always on innovation, and how do you do more, do better, do different with that toolkit that you have available to you. And so 13 years ago, the concept of incorporating software automation into that space started to land. The idea that you could use automation robots, we started to call them, to emulate and supercharge the people that were working on the teams that David and I would design, really started to take root. And for many of us, the rest is history. We kind of took off. David, you spearheaded the largest center of excellence around process automation, workflow automation
Yeah.
in the industry. Um, Tell us about that. How did that
Sounds
go?
about it. No, that was right. That was brilliant. That was all in the birth of robotic process automation, and it was just, we've been very fortunate, Ian and I. It's hard to believe it's not all skill. Not really, not when you get to know us.
Yeah.
But we've been in the right place at the right time, and right then was the right time, because BPOs were starting to look at how can they incorporate more technology into their operations, and robotic process automation was enabling them to do that. So
Mm.
we did that for a while, and got to the point where actually a lot of the clients that we were serving believed that they could do the automation without the outsourcing. And that's when we established Symphony Ventures. So that was back in 2014. So 12 years ago now. And yeah, we were able to establish a consulting, an SI, and a managed service practice that we then grew through 2018. We got funding. We went for another round of funding, and then it was just too good an opportunity to pass in terms of being acquired by some really nice people at Sykes at the time,
Yeah.
which is why, Ian, you're in Tampa, Florida, right?
That's why I'm sweating here in Florida. Yep.
Very good.
So you touched on some interesting things, and this is foundational to everything we're about to talk about, and really everything that we are doing now, which is, as you said, David, people started to be less interested in our human labor force and more interested in our robotic labor force. But we have, for 15 years, been testing and reaffirming and proving out to ourselves that a single solution in either one of those directions is never the optimal one.
That's right.
There was, I mean, you can do things with just humans. You likely can't do things with just automation of any capable type, now getting that much more capable, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But it's the hybrid that we always saw to be the ultimate sort of right answer for clients. Is how does software, how does automation, whatever you call it, RPA or AI or agents, supercharge the environment that they have to live in and the teams they're assisting, for the purpose of outcomes and experiences and everything that you're doing it for, because you're not just doing it to say, I've got robots. So that could be fun, but it's not, shouldn't be your end goal.
No, it's been a really interesting journey, because, as I say, we started in a BPO context, so where human agents were what were being relied upon for delivery. Then heavy automation and early days of AI then meant that was the main focus. Then we got acquired by another BPO firm. So even though we went out to serve customers without agents, we ended up back into an environment which was very sort of human centric as well. And then through all of our deployments and our clients, and we worked with the largest banks, the largest healthcare providers, so common was the challenge that we would deliver great value in providing the AI and the automation to do, say, 80% of the process, but there was always that 20% that was left to be manual. And trying to pass that work back and forth relied on our customers really trying to embrace working with us as a vendor to help them set up their automation, but to also then manage their internal operations in order to manage the change and release the benefits. Now, large enterprises can do that very well, but when you get into the mid-size space, by the way, I should say it doesn't mean they always do it very well, but there's definitely the resources there to sort of push through those projects. But when you get into the mid-market space, which is where we're really focused on providing the most support through Magentic, those capabilities are harder to come by. So we find that a lot of the clients we've been speaking to since we've been exploring this space over the last 3 years, really looking for a multi-agent workforce that combines both people and AI. And obviously the AI has evolved and changed over those years. We're now sort of more LLM heavy and looking at large action model deployments. But also RPA still plays its part in that as well, in terms of the procedural automation. then you've got your API access. So you've got a wealth of and a breadth of technology that we need to incorporate. But there's still so much which is best done by people.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, and that's to wrap up the context of who are these jokers who are running an AMA at the moment. Um, the gist is we're two guys who were in the right place at the right time. We were just lucky enough to be in places where interesting innovation was happening. But we also had the grounding of understanding, I mean, from having to deliver stability, having to keep people happy and build things that didn't like set companies on fire. And so we took a really pragmatic approach to it and always have. And over the last few years, we've had the beautiful freedom and liberty to really be studying a space we straight up love. Like it's been really interesting to watch. A lot of the fundamentals stay the same, while some of the narrative gets a little bit more exciting and certainly more confusing. And so that's why David and I sort of threw our hat back in this ring. We were so compelled. We thought it was interesting. It was fun. It would be really cool to work with the same sorts of folks we had the privilege of working with a decade ago. And so that's why we're here. And so that's why if you caught the news, if you saw all the headlines, the ticker tape and the billboards everywhere, that's not true. You saw that on Monday of last week, we launched Magentic. And thank you to everybody here, everybody who was excited for us and wished us luck. We need it. Thank you. And and is hopefully going to be along on this journey with us. So that happened. But what also happened was, a lot of our friends, a lot of industry veterans and experts started to ask us some really good questions, and we thought, well, what better way to address them than in public and unscripted with little or no preparation. And so that is what you are witnessing as we speak right now. And so, David, I'm gonna start us off. I will throw some questions at you, but what I will ask everybody who is tuned in, please send your questions in too. And the ones that are really hard, I will hand to David. The ones that are just softballs that will make me look really good answering, I will take. And that's what we're going to do together for the next 35, 40 minutes.
Now you're telling me.
Yeah. So let those questions come in. So we'll start with, ultimately, Magentic was a play on some words and an answer to the times, which is everyone is talking about agents. Our terminology has seemed to shift. We like giving new names to things. And so now agents and AI agents and agentic AI seems to be what everyone is really excited about. So, David, what's an AI agent?
Well, thank you, Ian. Yeah, as you say, there's not one definition that's out there. I'm sure many of the consulting firms and the analysts have offered definitions, but essentially it seems that the way it's being used in the industry is really to represent an AI capability that can deliver a specific task or set of tasks. What I find interesting is that when you're looking at AI agents or agentics, they always seem to be defined around a very small scope of work. So you've got like your document processing or your customer care, but when you look in the customer care agent, it's actually very sort of tightly confined to just a few interactions. So what we are seeing is the agentification of work, I think, is the breaking down of the work into its components. And then choosing the right solution. In this case, if it's an AI agent, we're looking predominantly at LLMs, but RPA also falls into the scope and the broader definition of artificial intelligence. So you've got these specific agents that perform certain tasks or sets of tasks. And I think as people, we like that because we're able to understand it and personify these use cases. So, we can better understand how each of our AI solutions are talking and interacting with each other, how each of our agents are working together. So I think that's why that term's really been really taken off and how it's been adapted.
It's interesting because it's almost psychological and less technical, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I mean, you're the process expert in the pair of us, but the idea of an end-to-end process seems to have been broken down into, as you pointed out. I mean, the building blocks are, the tiniest thing is a task or a
Yeah.
subtask, and then tasks get glued together, and you've got a sequence of tasks, and then those get glued together, and you get a process. And in the traditional, in the last decade, automation, often the narrative was, end-to-end workflow automation. You could do a scope of work. You could handle an accounts payable process or what have you. Um, and now, for whatever reason, and it's probably because technology requires it, we're breaking these things down to those atomic levels again. So AI agents, more often than not, are tasks within a more complex
Yeah.
workflow, and sometimes it's clean. I mean, in my day, 10 years ago, it was sort of one robot, quote unquote, that would animate and access and control and do actions. Now it seems like you're calling an army of agents to bear to do things, which is just a different way of looking at the problem, frankly.
Absolutely. I think
Um,
agentification has really come in on the back of citizen development as well. So works quite well in terms of it lends itself more towards the task automation, more of the assistant, or sort of plugging a gap in the process.
yeah.
So I think that's where that really started.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. So okay, so then the question, because naturally it came in, and as you see in the frame around our lovely heads, we thought long and hard about what it is our mission was and what would sort of energize us. But what we also thought, based on our 15 years of doing this, we could stand by. And what we truly believed in is more than just a deployment strategy, but it's a philosophy. And we came up with AI where it wins, people where it matters, better together. And the entire journey, what we're working on is Magentic. The name was chosen because we're passionate about a multi-agent workforce. And so, David, I throw this at you again. This feels more like a softball for you. I'll get harder in a moment. But what do we mean, and what do we think the world needs to be thinking of as it relates to a multi-agent workforce?
Well, I'll try and avoid reading our tagline at that point, but I mean, I will refer to it. So the AI where it wins, people where it matters, I think is quite a key sort of part of designing your multi-agent workforce. Key there is not, can AI do it, but should AI do it? So there will be some cases where things are still better off done for a variety of reasons. If it's around just that personal touch, the customer interaction, if it's to do with understanding and managing risk and understanding how decisions have been made and the auditability, although that's got a lot better. You may want to choose people to do certain tasks. In other cases, robots and AI do them very effectively. So in designing a multi-agent workforce, it allows you to think about what is best done by which group of agents. And then also that sort of throws open your aperture to look at bigger pieces of work. So look at functions. This isn't like the challenge that we've had in the past where you're doing automations, where you're looking for that perfect, process that is fully automatable end to end. You can look at it and take on more complex pieces where you've got people and subject matter experts, or you've just got escalation teams that you can hand the work out to. So what do you think, Ian?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I mean, ultimately, whatever you've got available and at your disposal. I mean, the point is use the right thing, use the right tool. Like no one's hammering in a screw. No one is sawing with with a hammer, right? Use the right tool. It's absurd not to. And even to this day and age, there will always be hype. Right, David and I are strong. I don't know. We're just grumpy. We've been around for too long, but a lot of this hype is necessary to move units and to raise funding. But it's bullshit, and it wastes your time, and it will misspend your valuable resources, especially as you work down to medium and small businesses. To be just straight up honest with you, large businesses will run infinite numbers of pilots. They always have. it's as much an exploration as just a sort of a game for folks in those companies. It's fun. Maybe they're learning something, but they have nearly infinite resources to do that. Most enterprises just don't have that liberty, and so you really do need to be very pragmatic about what it is that's right, the right agent. And agent's interesting because just from a nomenclature perspective, we used to always talk about humans and robots, which is a very weird way to talk about the workforce. Somehow we've come up with agents, which allows us to talk about both, frankly, and equalize them, which probably is giving the software agents too much control in this scenario. But multi-agent, you do need humans to do some things, and you do need software to do other things. And a question has come in. I'll refer to some of them. And thank you. Keep the questions coming. We will absolutely get to them. But one of the questions, it's just trying to sort of look under the hood, I guess, in Magentic, is what tools are we we And to some extent, who cares? Right? To some extent, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, we saw this 12 years ago is people would choose a tool first, primarily because they just liked the pitch, right? And then they would have to try to figure out how to make do with the tool they chose. And sometimes pitches are more cavalier than others, and they chose the wrong tool. And so we watched massive initiatives just go nowhere or backwards, because it was a tool first discussion, a tool first journey. And David and I have been around this for way too long, and we are just not interested in being tool first folks. This is all about what is the point, what's the outcome you're trying to create or achieve, and then you put the right multi-agent solution together. And the other thing to add there is whatever the right multi-agent solution is today is without a doubt not the right one in 6 months. Right? Things evolve and change. Technology gets better, and so you need the capacity to continue to learn and to continue to evolve, but do so responsibly, because some of the capabilities here are both astoundingly powerful and also still astoundingly untested. And so you just don't want to be giving too much control and remit and autonomy to certain things that you don't understand yet. And there's a lot about this that most companies just don't understand. We just haven't had it long enough to understand it.
Yeah. I think I'm back to that point on tool usage, and I do obviously agree with you, and no surprise. But in terms of there's too much focus on the specific tools. Certainly don't want to appear like we're ducking the question, though. I mean, I think it's probably better to think about what sort of categories of tools we use. So we use LLMs where it's right to do so. We use workflow orchestration tools to tie everything together. We tie into applications with API access wherever possible. But actually, it's surprising how much we're also pulling out of our tool chest the RPA tools in order to basically be the glue that joins it all together. So we do that. We build quite a few custom apps with a lot of AI written software nowadays. So that's a really useful way to sort of stand up an interface to an agent. And then we use low code and no code tools. But I think the thing is when you start getting into a tool discussion, before you know it, you spent half an hour talking about all of the tools that you're looking at. It's going to be one of the things we will be releasing soon, which will be a table of AI elements. In the same way as you have that within back to the chemistry lessons, all of those different groups of minerals and elements that come together. We're architecting how all of the AI elements in Agentics come together, because then when you're sort of combining your solutions to wow, sounding very going deep on the lab metaphor.
Yeah,
there.
Love it. Keep going.
When you're combining your solutions, you're pulling together each several elements in order to get them to work together to provide the outcome, the service that you're looking to deliver. And what we have noticed is, we've been in stealth mode for a little while now, and we've landed several anchor clients that we've been deploying this stuff with. But over that time, we've also been swapping out you know, an LLM model for another. We've been sort of looking at how we integrate in with documents and changed our solutions there. So it's very quick moving. I think, you know, whatever the tools that an organization is using today, there'll be some anchor sort of foundations that you'll continue to use, but there will be a lot that's coming in and out. And so that's what we try and keep the focus on, is what's the outcome that you want, and then adjust the tools that you use to achieve it, and to always be at the front end and optimizing that process.
Absolutely agree. Which actually brings up another great question. Elizabeth asked, "Do we think MCP servers will change the game?" And the answer is probably absolutely. Well, for all of the things that David just said, which is effectively their ability to create sort of modular, scalable, interoperable elements that, you know, tap into capabilities and allow you the speed at which you can evolve and choose, again, back to the right tool for the right job at the right time. And that right tool and right time will constantly be changing. Even the right job, the job might be evolving and changing as you assess whether it even has to be done anymore. But this concept of making these things more interoperable, where they share their states and they coordinate tasks more fluidly than you having to really chewing gum and twine this stuff together, is tremendous. And frankly, interestingly, kind of brings us back to the era we had a decade ago, where everything was sort of in one platform, so it worked together. We sort of got away from that. It got more and more confusing and harder to govern and harder to sort of interconnect, and MCPs are going to help us to get sort of back to a degree where you can. And then part of the winning combination will be exactly what David said, which is just this willingness and then ability to be nimble and to experiment, but always with a commitment towards stability of operations and delivery. Because no one's going to give you credit if you take down the finance and accounting department while you're tinkering and playing and learning about the new exciting tools out there. That's just not tenable. And so that's where some of our operational background comes to play, where we think you need to have two plans going on in parallel. One, you have to know what you're doing, add value, deliver consistently, and in many cases, that's not actually happening as a current state. Right? The current state often is characterized by little or no process documentation, a lack of true clarity as to what goes on. And those are some underpinning sort of foundational elements that need to be in place before you race off and try to figure out which LLM is right for you, because you're just fundamentally not in the right sort of process space to be having that discussion yet. And I think that's what's so interesting about this era of operational and digital transformation, is it's coming faster and faster at companies, and it's easier and easier to tap into, but that doesn't change the laws of physics. And that's, David, I'll pass this over to you, because this goes back 13, 14 years. When we first heard about automation in any way, shape, or form, the first thing you did wasn't race off and start to build robots in your garage. I remember you would these awesome static whiteboard stick-ups. What did you do? What was your instinct to do first?
Or to map the process, to really understand the requirement. I mean, you know, I'm a process guy at heart. Which is why it's been really interesting watching this space evolve. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. Just going back to Elizabeth's question earlier, will the MPC servers change the game? I couldn't help, you know, to come back to the point of, really, the game is still defined from our experience in those things that stop successful deployments, and that is do you understand what you need, and are you capable of getting it into place? Technology is one part of it. And as technology evolves, it will certainly improve the capabilities that you've got to work with and give you broader sort of opportunities. But it really comes down to whether or not you understand fundamentally what you want to put in place, and you've got the capabilities of managing the change with the people. And it's amazing how many times, even with the best technology, that's still the stumbling block. So I think sort of pursuing the better technology is always going to have a part in sort of staying ahead, but it's only one piece. Which I don't know if we want to sort of tackle with that John's question around. I don't know if you can see. I don't think I can promote questions onto the board, but do you think that IT departments will pick an enterprise solution, such as ServiceNow or Salesforce, to orchestrate everything, or would allow the various ERPs and SaaS vendors to use their agents? I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think one of the key challenges that we've got is there's definitely the arms race to try and provide the most capable set of AI capabilities, and that's predominantly focused around LLM usage still within these enterprise applications. I do think that agility is going to be really important to enterprises as they move forward with their agentic workforce and their multi-agent workforce. And the ability to have a platform where you can swap in and swap out different models, different agents, is going to be what's going to, define success. So I would say that there's definitely a route for those platforms, but I think if you're able to split your work down, autonomize your work in a way that you can then call in different technologies for different jobs outside of the standard sort of ERP and enterprise solution spaces, that's where you're going to probably see the most innovation in the coming years. So that's what we're seeing anyway, and more of an interest to start working with these other vendors.
It's fascinating because the discussion arose in lots of pretty significant individuals in the IT space, software space, were they were foreseeing a day in which software as a service died, and you didn't need it. You could effectively create a lot of your own capabilities. And it's interesting because, and I've spent, before David and I met, I was doing ERP implementations way back in the day. And, I think in simple analogies, but I sort of think about like a Monopoly board. I wouldn't know how to play Monopoly if I didn't have the board in front of me. And it sort of creates the structure and the rules and the direction in which you travel. And so a lot of these systems do that for a department, whether you're in HR, finance, supply chain. So that modularity and that ability and that flexibility to start to craft and create some of your own applications, tap into agents of all flavors and forms, requires an intense maturity that is a tall ask for most organizations of any size, right? If I didn't have the Monopoly board, no matter how much I knew about Monopoly, I'd still probably have trouble playing Monopoly. And so, so there's got to be some of these existing enterprises are still going to create the structure and the rules and just the environment in which work gets done. I think I could be completely wrong because this space is changing so darn fast and it's really confusing. John, great question. Let's see. There are a lot of really good questions coming in, and I need to find another hard one to assign to David.
I think our good friend Mark has got a good one there.
No, this is a number of organizations.
Yeah.
There we go.
We're going to stop reading out the questions, mind you. It's a good filler.
Yeah.
It takes me too long.
Yeah. Mark asks, a number of organizations are struggling to get any ROI from many of their AI endeavors. And so people are trying to measure this stuff as customer success or employee success scores, and not just hours back to the business, which was a term we really settled on 10 years ago as we were trying to figure out how to measure value. So, David, do we agree that this is a valid way to measure performance and ROI?
I'm probably not going to surprise Mark, because I think we've probably been here many times before, but absolutely. I think it's quite simplistic just to look at the benefits that a business can get from any technology as just being savings. And it kind of sort of takes you in a salami slicer where you're constantly sort of, reducing your operating costs and your ability to compete. So I love it when clients do look at, other measures of what success is. If it's delivering more to the client, if it's improving your competitive positioning, if it's giving you better insights, if it's better as, customer or employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
So, I think quality and differentiation is really important, and will be even more so going forward. Just the time it takes to process things as well. I mean, you can do things cheaply, but they tend to be done in low cost models, and that takes time. So just the instant responses that you can get with quite a large level of data through the AI models is a fantastic use case. So what is also interesting to this question, though, is that what we are seeing is this huge plethora of organizations that are going out trying to deploy AI because it's the next shiny thing. And over 90% of them not getting past the pilot stage. And that is an industry stat. And we find that somewhat alarming and somewhat predictable, because it's not that the technology is not capable, it's just that it's being used because it's the new tool, the new toy. And the fundamentals of working out what is the business case that we're trying to hit is kind of the afterthought. So go out with a technology first approach. We're going to deploy AI. We want to pilot it in some places. We want to see if we can get a benefit. But then, there may be a case that it's mistargeted. It's looking at a financial saving when there's a better tool for that, rather than a customer service improvement. So yeah, I think it's really fascinating. I think that will definitely improve over time as enterprises get more sort of self-aware on where the right places are to deploy. But I do find it fascinating at the moment that we're seeing such a high dropout at the pilot stage.
And thank you, Mark. Good to
Yeah.
see you. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was a keynote speaker at an intelligent automation conference, and that was 6 months, maybe 9 months after ChatGPT had sort of slammed onto the scene and it was the talk of the town. And a whole bunch of people were saying that their intelligent automation initiatives, whatever that included, usually IDP, RPA, some machine learning, we're all now fighting for budget and attention because the leaders were pivoting everything to a Gen AI LLM strategy. And it was fascinatingly predictable, to David's point, that everyone chases shiny. And I think it's just because we like to be entertained and we like new. And we really do seem to be wired to be told that things are easy and hugely capable and magically good. And so the amount of legitimate, really valuable, sensible programs that we're looking at how to automate workflow automation, scopes throughout a business, probably suffered over the last 2 years as everyone sort of put tools down on those and went off to try to figure out how they can replace everything with an LLM. And it's just, it's a natural wave. And then you get all the articles about how most of those initiatives aren't adding value, and there's a trough of disillusionment just because we invite it. We literally make it possible because we love to be told an exaggeration and embrace it as a possibility and real. So we do it to ourselves. It's why David and I are so interested in the small, medium business space, because they just don't have, first of all, you often don't find those people at those conferences because they're just too busy getting work done. They just have too much on their plate to go off to boondoggles and attend conferences. And they also just don't have the liberty to take these fanciful swings at things that are just too early and too hyped. And so I think that's where you're going to find more mature, careful adoption, I think, or at least you should. And, that's my grumpy point on that. But the number of people who just hunger for these articles about how you don't need a single human in your business anymore because you can run everything lights out with all of these super autonomous agents. And yet, Mark, come back to your point of what are you actually going for? What's the benefit and the purpose? And if removing all salary costs is the only metric which you're chasing, then that's a reasonable goal. It will create, first of all, a pretty miserable place to work, and second of all, probably an absolute dumpster fire operationally, as you realize that humans are kind of useful and create benefits and lots of useful and lots of valuable ways. So go humans. That's why you need both. In heavily regulated, let's see. I haven't even read this question, so let's see what this does to us. In heavily regulated sections like finance and insurance, how can AI agents be deployed without compromising compliance while still enhancing decision making and operational efficiency? So we had an RPA program 8 years ago with a bank where we were using machine learning to do anti-money laundering and know your customer, and the AI got it right. It would got it right consistently, but could never show why or how it got it right. And so that program kind of went nowhere, because if you can't audit in heavily regulated environments, then you're just asking all of your auditors to just take it on faith that magically it'll get it right the next time. And if ever an issue comes up, you can just lean on just the promise that AI is amazingly lucky at getting it right. So that's that's one of my memories from the past. So, but yeah,
Uh,
and yeah,
yeah.
David, what do you have to say to this question?
I think it's a great question, and the first thing that comes to mind is slowly and carefully is probably how you can deploy AI agents. I think start with smaller scopes of work. I think one of the things that we've seen is that the more you break down the task into smaller and smaller pieces, the less chance there is to go off in a different direction, to hallucinate wildly, to go into a direction that then's hard to substantiate. So, you can use AI agents to perform smaller pieces with much more focused prompts, then tie them together, and then use other LLMs in order to interrogate the content that you produce. That's been quite interesting. So we've seen that being used for financial insights, because you avoid asking open-ended questions like around where the forecast, what's the forecast performance of the business going to be for the next year. But if you build up your data set with more focused prompts and then you query that data set, then you get a much more limited set of responses, which prevents you going into off the rails too greatly. The other thing I suppose I would say with it is, it's all about risk and identifying where the risk is acceptable. So deploying it in areas of low risk and continually monitoring, auditing the outputs and making sure that you're doing some validation, I think is important. And then sort of, dial up the risk appetite so you can take on larger and larger scopes of work. But appreciate some sectors also have some real challenge around compliance issues, so that's something you've got to take into consideration.
And then
Useful.
the nice thing about the multi-agent element too is what we always saw and see is so many different layers and handoffs often exist just because something happened either unintentionally or nefariously, that caused a need to do a QA or a check or a review or an audit. And now you can digitize that. I mean, and 10 years ago, we sort of took the liberty to believe that you didn't even need the check anymore because you weren't going to fat finger something or try to steal something. But the ability to really just toss in a whole bunch of agents with higher and higher levels of sort of sort of appreciation and understanding of the environment and the task does allow for a more robust environment, just as long as, again, from a compliance perspective, you can prove why they're doing it. Just because you tap into a really capable LLM doesn't mean that that's enough for a bank or a healthcare organization to tick a box and say we're safe now. You do need the controls that David mentioned.
Sorry, guys, if we're going out of sequence, so please bear with us. But there's a question earlier on from Jack Rimmer. So hi, Jack.
Yeah.
And Ian, I'm sure you'll want to draw reference because his first comment was complimenting you on your old Tesla talk.
Yes,
so,
this is very important. I think we're going to dedicate the next 15 minutes. I want to dedicate to Jack's kind memory of me filming videos while driving to work in my Tesla, which were called Tesla Talks, which at a point the lawyers at the company told me I should probably stop calling it that, which I thought was silly because that's just advertising. Like they would want me to do that. But Jack, I had like a minute and a half. I was on the highway. I lived really close to work. And so I decided, what can I do with this minute and a half? And so I started those videos, and I would sort of make up the topic as I was getting on the highway. So they can't promise any of them are really good, but you remembered the human in the loop one. So, so
I
good
think
or
it was
not, it
when
stuck.
COVID, yeah, it
Thank
was
you.
when COVID hit and it was a cardboard Tesla in your living room. I think that's when we all got a bit worried for you.
Yes, I still have that. It was a box for some piece of furniture or something, and I literally cut out windows and cut out a little Tesla logo and sat inside of it. I only think I did 2 videos in that box, but I still have the box, and people still talk to me about
Okay.
that video.
We'll put
So,
it up as a prize sometime.
so there you go. That's what we're going to do the next AMA, from the box. So
Absolutely.
we'll take we'll take a poll at the end if anyone wants to see any of us again, and or the box. Maybe just the
Brilliant.
box.
Sorry, Ian, would you mind pulling up Jack's? It was the other comment Jack posted. So it's, do you think agentic tech offers a more realistic opportunity to productize solutions, which could legitimately be sold as a product rather than services wearing a product frock, which we've seen a lot in RPA? I think it's a great question. I think the challenge is that it's a lot easier for organizations to find customers with budgets by selling products than it is by selling services. So I think RPA service firms have traditionally gone out looking for productizable offerings. So I think that's, if I'm understanding right, I think that's the context to this in terms of, does agentic change that? I think agentic gives us the opportunity to build, yes, custom products. So less from a how do I configure a toolkit in the RPA days to more how do I build from scratch, but using these foundations to build a product. And we're definitely seeing it being built into pretty much every product out there, even if it is just to Mark's comment that he mentions later on, which is that it's being used in a defensive strategy, just so when everyone can say that every tool's got an agent and an AI element to it. But in terms of, can it give us more productizable offerings? I'd say in the software space, yes. In the services space, it still comes down to, we're going to need to cater for the nuances of every organization. And I think that's what we saw a lot of in the RPA space, that beyond the slideware and the presentations, when you get into sort of core line of business processes, you're not looking at three-way invoice matching, for example, but you're looking at how an insurance firm handles its insurance risk and its lines of business or books of business. Then that's when you get into configuration. And I think there's definitely agentic enablers and accelerators out there that you can reuse and you can define once and deploy again. But I think it's building that custom deployment that is still unfortunately needed in a lot of cases. And if it wasn't needed, then it would all be handled by the large ERPs, I'm sure. So it's an interesting question. I think it does give a lot of opportunity there.
We'll note Jack apparently got in a lift and missed our answer to his question.
It was brilliant, I tell you.
So if we are to do another AMA in the future, we would ask that no one move while we're talking. So that'll be the new rule. Jack, how dare you be moving while we are answering your question?
Oh,
good friend Tom asks us if we're going to be writing the Agentic Bible. If so, what will be in it? This is a lovely reference back to 2015, when we put together something called the RPA Bible, which was totally based on a massive, well, somewhat informed by, we did other stuff as well, but a massive sort of proof of concept, proof of technology comparison between 4 leading RPA vendors at the time, which is interesting because I think now it would be almost impossible to keep up with the speed and what's happening, and everything's slightly different. So I don't know that you could ever reproduce what we did in 2015.
There'd be a lot of New Testaments and New Testaments.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Like, Tom, you know this. The Agentic Bible would go together and be outdated as we were writing it. So,
you know what? I think that's part of the, and this is why I'm not allowed out on market-facing stuff very often, because I say boring things. Like, the technology is obviously constantly changing, and the opportunities are always constantly changing. But the Bible we wrote last time around RPA, and if we went for an agentic again, it would come down to the same foundations. It's like, do you really understand the requirement? Are you able to manage the change? Are you able to realize the benefits? It's amazing how sort of over the last 25 years of my career, the tools have changed, but the underlying sort of challenges and what blocks and what enables successful projects, it remains pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's probably a rehash of lessons learned in the past that could be very applicable here as well.
Well, and even more so, sort of on steroids, which is the way we seem to say things are more than the prior. But ultimately, those fundamental laws of physics, as you say, whether you're a two-person firm or a 200,000 person firm with an infinite budget to do this stuff, the realities always were it's going to go well if and if you know what it is you're trying to achieve, if you've got a clarity and ideally documentation of the processes that exist in the operation today, if you're capable of assessing what you've got as current state and evolving it to a future state that sets you up for success without necessarily using technology. We saw a lot of impact in the hundreds of clients we served that predated any sort of implementation of automation. Just simply the act of self-assessment and review created value because most companies suck at process documentation, lack a clarity of what it is they're doing or how they're doing it, and are riddled with fiefdom and politics and agenda and everything else. And that was when there were 4 tools to compare side by side over the course of several weeks. Now there's 4,000 that have launched as we've been talking. And Lord knows how you keep on top of that. And they're easier now to get access to and to put into play. So where we used to talk about gray IT and technical debt, that was, the old version of gray IT and technical debt was adorable compared to what it is that you face in companies today. So you really do need, you need to just respect all of the fundamentals that, David made us so good and made you so good at setting up the capabilities we've done in the past, and hopefully serve us well in these new adventures that we're on today.
It's amazing when you say just the insight that is brought by just studying and taking a step back and looking at the operations. Several occasions we've got the stories of where we're halfway through reporting back a requirement of what we found when we looked at what the team does, and they're saying they don't need to do that. That we replaced that 6 months ago, and then you find out it was never actually rolled out as a change. So people have been doing unnecessary tasks for 6 months in large quantities. Or you'll find something crazy like someone's running a report by keeping a stapler on the keyboard, because until then they realized they had to hold it for 20 minutes until the system would start responding again. The day they found the first sort of agentic stapler was a huge benefit.
And these are true stories. These are literally things that we saw and will no doubt continue to see. And so just because there's some really cool, well-shot influencer videos that say, I can run a business with no humans. All I need is these 72 different agentic tools. That's not sustainable in a business of any size or any maturity. So we come back to the pragmatic futurists that we try to be, which is, this is amazing. The capabilities are orders of magnitude more sort of fluid and interesting than they were 12, 15 years ago, but the laws of physics haven't changed. The environments in which you're operating have not changed. And so the rigor and the maturity and and just the approach need to respect that. While you're trying to make sense of the fact that like tools are changing by the hour, and things like the MCP server concept, which really only entered our lives very recently, and Google's got a version and others have too. That's a lot to keep your head around. So some of our assertion is, you're either a gearhead who loves this stuff and is just scrambling on archive to read the 100 white papers that drop every hour, or you're just or you're an operator or owner who is trying to just keep things running, trying to build a business, trying to keep your staff happy, trying to keep your customers happy, trying to find new customers. And a lot of this stuff is just a sideshow and a distraction. You just need to do what works and do it reasonably. Boom.
Pretty good.
I had a mic, I'd drop it, and then I'd regret having just dropped a mic I purchased. Let's see. There's people who are commenting on the comments that we made. So that's this one. This feels like a dramatic reading. So Doug, I
Yeah.
feel like you need to go into this and read it with true sincerity. But AI first, then drive to human first, enable human in the loop, then drive towards gaining trust and build human on the loop. Now, Doug, you know your stuff, so I'm gonna take some of this for on faith. But there's a lot of terms in there. But yeah, I think whatever the loop is, you're part of, I mean, ultimately. And so, David and I firmly believe that the loop is best served by having the right elements of that chain or loop be the right ones, whether they be really sophisticated AI agents or really simple, brittle workflow automation that is still hugely valuable, or really good people who bring judgment and humanity and nuance and an understanding of strategy to the party.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think the mindset order is right. And probably the way that we would attack it would probably be the alternate way. So the other way around. So starting off with, in a controlled environment, all human, really understand it, then move to a model where humans are doing part, and then you're starting to agentify, prototype that new way of working, start deploying sort of AI agents into the areas of the lowest risk, and start building it up until you get to the point where, if I'm understanding it right, the human on the loop, sort of the human's the one that's sort of monitoring and the orchestration and the end to end. So I think it's right. Design it with the view that it's going to be AI first and then people, but deploy it people and then move more to AI.
Nicely done.
Very good.
We agree. Doug, we have your interpreter for me, and we like it.
Or we got it completely wrong, in which case we apologize.
Yeah, and then please send us the interpretation. No, so first, and we're at the end of an hour, and your valuable hour, and we have loved seeing some old friends and familiar names and some new ones as well. So thank you for joining us. I guess one thing I would ask is, was this useful? Should we do more of these in the future? Would anyone tune in? Because there's really so much to explore. We've really only just scraped the surface, and as we said, there's a lot that some historical experience can add insight and value to what it is that's happening today. Maybe slow down the clock speed a little bit as you start to think about the things that matter the most, to picking the tools and the areas of focus. And so many of the questions sort of highlighted that, as far as focusing on where the value is, focusing on what makes the most sense for your team and your finite resources. Let's see. Ooh, okay. We got to pick this one up, right?
That's a great one. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
So, are there examples of AI agents replacing RPA, or is there a place for all styles of automation? So, and thank you, Joel, for persevering with that comment. So, I believe in a multi-agent workforce, RPA is a great agent to have in your toolkit and to deploy on certain tasks. Now, I would say that if an AI agent today is able to do what you need it to do, it's probably the best solution in the future. Always worth checking, are there better ways of integrating with it? Or is it fundamentally following a process that should be re-engineered now with an agentic approach? So say, for example, have you been forcing your customers or your employees to use structured data forms in order for the RPA to use it? Can you combine that with an agentic agentic LLM use case, a deployment, which goes in and extracts the structure from an unstructured communication. Then you can go off and process in your old line of business applications, which RPA does very well. And then you can pull it back and again go back to have that communication with the user through more natural means. So that's one example. But yeah, we use a variety of tools. We use these orchestration layers. We plug into the orchestration layers all the different type of agents, and we still got a team that's doing RPA because there's some points where it is just the best tool. So why change it?
Yeah, there's a course I taught years ago where people's sort of pejorative statement around RPA was that it was simple or dumb, and I used to say that RPA is not dumb; it's just well behaved, and it does exactly what you tell it to do. And then we started referring to that as brittle because it also stops being so well behaved if some of its environment changes or a process changes. But when you think about it, if you take a 10,000 foot view of work and you ask yourself, which is what's going to come out in some of our table of elements, you ask yourself what's happening, why and when does it happen, how does it happen? In most cases, work is procedural. It's there for a reason, and it's done in a way that you've scripted it to do it. You wouldn't want to take a crack at doing payroll a different way for every employee every month. There is no need for creativity in a lot of processes, and therefore, is there a need for much more complex processing in the form of generative LLMs to do that scope of work, or do you just look at the elements and the parts of any sort of process where that creativity or nuance or flexibility has to exist, and you use the right agent at the right time for the right task? And so, I mean, whatever you call it, whether you call it RPA or you call it something else just because maybe your marketing team says that that's outdated and makes you sound antiquated, there's still a very real large percentage of work going on that RPA class technologies are perfect for.
What I would say, though, is that I don't think we're doing or come across any projects recently where it would just use RPA. So I think that's probably the difference. I would still use RPA in a large number of projects, but it would be one agent in a multi-agent workforce. So I don't know if that helps, Joel, but perhaps look at where you've got RPA that's working well today and see how you can extend it with AI.
Awesome. Great question, Joel. Okay. So now we've used up more than your hour. I want to thank everybody for joining David and me on our first AMA. I had fun. David?
Yeah.
Cool. There you have it. So if we're the voting group of two, but if others think we should keep doing this too, I mean, man, this is we learn as much from our discussions and from the questions as we learn from just tinkering and doing the building that we're doing. So let's keep this going. And for those who did get on elevators while we were answering their specific questions, the recordings will be available on LinkedIn and all of your favorite LinkedIn feeds. And if you aren't already, I would ask that you follow us on the channels, whatever those might be. David and me on LinkedIn, our new Magentic page. Do check it out. We think it's colorful and tells a bit of the story and some of the background and motivation for this new adventure, and just stay in touch. And if we can be of assistance, please do get in touch. And with that, I will wish you all a happy July 1st. Can you believe it's July 1st? That's
quick.
That's a lot to get my head around. Halfway through the year. Okay. Well, happy second half of the year, everybody. David, a pleasure as always. And off we go. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.